Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, if you're stopping by, you're probably a Leafs or Habs fan here to talk about the second game of this series. And guess what? The Leafs take this one 5-1. So as Habs fans, we're all Habs fans on this panel. We need to talk about this game potentially biasedly, but join alongside me to do so are Alex, Justin, and myself, Mackie. If you guys are used to our podcast, we've said it before, but if you missed it, we're doing these quick reviews for YouTube-friendly stuff, but it'll still be on your phone if you want to check that out on iTunes, Spotify, all of that good stuff. But let's get right into it. Boys, Montreal Canadiens get smoked in this one. There's a couple of headlines that we want to get into, but I want to start off with your comments on this game. Quite a few things that stood out as a Habs fan, I think. Alex, let's start with you. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, look, I mean, the main storyline for most fans is going to be the reffing, but for me, that wasn't the issue with this game. I think the effort was pretty poor, and I think if we had 0 penalties called against us, we still would have lost this game. Again, that's not the end of the world. It's the playoffs, 7-game series. We lose one. We go back to the Bell Center 1-1. That's a pretty good thing. If you had asked me at the start of the series if we could come back home 1-1, I'd take it. So we move on, go to game 3 at the Bell Center, and bounce back next game.
Yeah, for me, it was, I think the refs somewhat dictated the momentum of the game and gave it to the Leafs in the second. As much as I was disappointed with the effort of the Habs 5-on-5 from the second period on, I think the refs, the power plays that the Leafs had just kind of gave them the most momentum in the game and let them ride it out, and we could never come back from that. So it's on the Habs for sure. But I would have liked to see some more calls on our side.
Yeah, I could agree with both of those takes. Let's get into the details of this game. Starting with the first, I mean, I'm wearing his jersey. I got to talk about it. It's not a joke. I bought this thing for a reason. Kotkaniemi steps in for Jake Evans, who got injured in the last game. So this was a pretty kind of statement type of game for him to come in. And guess what? He gets the goal, which is a great thing for Habs fans. He then does the 4-finger salute for the 4 players, Evans, Caulfield, Romanov, and Frolik that we're watching from the press box. A great way to start off and get some momentum for a pretty even first period here for the Habs.
I thought the 4 was for like 4 games, like we're gonna sweep, and I thought that was like the cockiest thing ever, and I was kind of scared. But I'm glad that it was very wholesome and it was like a kind of team friendly thing.
Yeah, agreed. That would have been real cocky. Next up, obviously, to tie this thing up was a little bit of a situation there in our end. Arturi Lehkonen trying to make a carom pass, if I'm trying to quote Dom Emmerich from NHL games, and it gets stopped by the ref. And then the Leafs somehow get it back, and Jason Spezza basically steals it from Wayne Simmons and says, fuck that, I'm going to take care of this. And he snipes it on Carey Price. A little bit of a broken play, but still a good one. It's the game of hockey. I'm not going to hold it really too much on the refs. It's just a shitty bounce for the Habs that had a pretty good first period. However, now we get into the second period, and this is where shit hits the fan from a penalty standpoint. Now, I'm going to name out all of the penalties, okay? There's the penalty on Gallagher. There's the penalty on Lehkonen, which Sportsnet still hasn't sent that footage. Then there's the penalty against Kotkaniemi for the cross-check that he broke a stick. Then there was the challenge, and then there was the penalty on the challenge. So we're going to get through all of these, but Alex, what do you think about this whole period and this penalty situation, if you want to call it that way?
Yeah, look, if people want to get into reffing as the issue, I will absolutely give you guys that Lehkonen penalty. Like you said, they didn't even want to show the footage. And that Gallagher penalty that should have at least been an offsetting penalty with TJ Brody. The other one, though, on Kotkaniemi, I mean, his stick broke in his hands from the cross-check. They can't ignore that. And the goalie interference, which was one of the most strange calls I've ever seen, especially in a playoff game where you're down 3-1, which is a surmountable deficit, but going down 4-1 would have been a disaster. And the footage was clearly not good enough to warrant that call. So yeah, I'll give you guys those 2 penalties, but I think the Habs' performance as a whole was just not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that those two penalties you're talking about are warranted penalties. I just thought that the Leafs also committed some of those kind of penalties that didn't get called. So that's my problem with it. I do agree with you that the Kotkaniemi and the Shea Weber penalties, those ones 100% should have been called, and obviously the the Marc Bergevin a goaltender interference call should have been a call. But yeah, I just think in the playoffs, you either have to call nothing or be consistent with your calls. And we should hold the refs to a higher standard, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, and the thing about me is that when you look, there. If this was a regular season game, I can buy it, but this is the playoffs. And when I see the stat line of 5-1 and certain calls that go uncalled, again, we're Habs fans, and this is probably biased. I can potentially admit that. But from my perspective, when I see this stat line, it doesn't merit the egregiousness. It didn't match. I just don't find that there was enough for the Montreal Canadiens side to say that, yes, you absolutely deserved every single call. And even though it's only those first two calls, that makes a big difference. You know, the Gallagher Brody situation, you got to call both on that. You have to call both. Then there's a one play, I think it was Bogosian with, I can't remember what player that was, or Thornton. Yeah, that's it. Dano, who's trying to get out. It's right in front of you after that Lehkonen. I still don't know. Nobody has seen the Lehkonen call. Like, come on. If you could show me the Lehkonen call, fine. I'll be wrong, but I still haven't seen it. So until that happens, you got to call something back. And I know that it might come into the makeup calls culture and that you don't want that to be a scenario, but I don't know. For me, that's one thing of this game that I didn't like. But as you said, Alex, it's no excuse for the response that the Habs gave and the performance that they gave in the third. One thing that I'll touch on, though, that Philippe Danault said at the end of the game, which was that the Canadiens had trouble getting their legs back after all the penalties in the second period. Again, not an excuse. Justin.
Yeah, but just on that, like it's really tough when you have 4 penalty kills in a row. And like it messes up with the lines. Like obviously some players play on the PK, some players don't. So you're going in with different guys you're not necessarily used to playing with. Like it's hard to get your feet back. The thing that's not so much of an excuse is coming back into third and not being able to get your shit together, basically. So that part I didn't really get. Like that's where I thought the Habs would come back and be able to really get back in the game, but it just wasn't there.
Yeah, I think what you guys are saying makes a lot of sense. And what you just touched on is, I guess, my biggest issue with this game as a whole. I understand that the momentum may have been killed, but coming into the third and not even testing Jack Campbell, like, I don't care if we had still lost that game and Jack Campbell had to come up big, make 2 big saves. And yeah, so what? We lose 4-1 or 5-1. At least we would have showed a bit of effort there. But it kind of worries me going into the rest of the series that it seems like Toronto's depth is outplaying our depth. We knew that their top forwards were better than our top forwards, but it's our depth that has to stand out. And it seems like guys like Pierre Engvall, I know he just played his 1 game, but Foligno, Kerfoot, etc. are outplaying our bottom 6 or even bottom 9, we could say. So you just need someone to step up and show something offensively.
Yeah, there's 2 sides to this. For me, I agree with you. Montreal Canadiens, if they want to win this series, they need put out a better effort. And for me, the center position is a big one. I think Philippe Danault had a great game today, and in context. It wasn't the best out of everyone in terms of the Montreal Canadiens as a whole. That's the point I'm trying to make here. But I need to hear more centermen's names that are dangerous. And I hate to say it, and I know he's young and he's shown it in the past in the bubble. And he's a kid. But Nick Suzuki needs to be a factor. He needs to be a factor for us to start getting goals. Unless, the Habs rely on the fact that Carey Price is going to be vintage Carey Price and steals the series. That could be another storyline. The other side that I want to say is that if I'm the Toronto Maple Leafs, this game for me is not a clear indicator that you are dominating the Habs, because once again of the storyline of all of these penalties, but this was not a matchup that showed really both sides competing on the same level playing field. Now, people will argue when I say that I'm trying to excuse the fact that they didn't deserve the win. They did deserve the win. All I'm saying is that if you hadn't got the win, that would have been completely outrageous. I think all Leafs fans can agree is that you, as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, even though JT, a quick mention on JT, who everybody was thinking about, all of the tests from what I got, I just want to get this correct, is that Kyle Dubas said that all the CT scans and MRIs cleared for John Tavares, and there's no structural damages to his head, neck, and spine. So once again, that's great to hear. Coming back to my point, though, is that the Toronto Maple Leafs need to win a game where they have 5 power plays and the Canadiens have 1. As simple as that, and that's what they got done. So, Justin, sorry, go ahead if you had something to add on here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, you're talking about Carey Price kind of standing on his head to win us games. I think in this game he actually did keep us in it. Like in the two first power plays the Leafs had, he was doing just that, standing on his head, and he made some incredible saves in close, like 3-4 saves in a row. And I think I don't think there's one person on Twitter or on Leaf side or the Habs side that's blaming Carey Price on this loss. And I think if Price can keep this up and frustrate the Leafs at least 5-on-5, it's going to be, we have a good chance still in this series.
Yeah. I just want the narrative for next game not to be about any penalties. I just want it to be a game of hockey and really see what these two teams have. And unfortunately, the first 2 games between the Habs and the Leafs has been spoiled by 2 separate and completely different contextual kind of incidents. The first one being a terrible one, and the second one here being a little bit about the penalty situation. But I'd like to see a game where it's not about that. So let's get into a couple of lineup changes that you guys may foresee. Obviously, the Leafs made a couple of changes with John Tavares' injury, which is Alex Galchenyuk, former Hab, that comes into the lineup. And I believe Engvall, that was his first game, if I'm not mistaken. Am I wrong here?
There was.
Yeah.
Riley Nash came out.
Yeah, exactly. So Engvall, who had himself a game. So what do you guys see for the Montreal Canadiens as potential lineup changes? I'll get maybe your thoughts, Alex, on this one.
Yeah, I think Montreal needs offense. We've scored 2 goals in 2 games now? 3 goals in 2 games. So Cole Caulfield is the clear option, and someone has to sit, but there has to be a spark somewhere. I could see it being a guy like Tatar or Armia. I think Armia might have 2 points, but it's just not happening offensively really for anyone. I know Caulfield, there's worries that he may be pushed around or might not be able to do anything, but at this point you have to try something. The Leafs are going to score. They're going to keep scoring. So we have to try something, and I hope that Caulfield plays next game.
There was a little quote that I want to add about Caulfield, because Duchamp was asked this a little bit about the possibility of an offensive spark that they need, obviously, after this game. And he said it's possible. Like everyone available, we have depth, and we're going to use it. So maybe that's the case. Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally with Alex. I think we need more offense, and I think Caulfield can come in. I mean, he's played in some big games in college and stuff, and I think he has what it takes. And another thing we have to remember is that Montreal's going back home, so they'll have last change, and they'll be able to somewhat control the matchups for Caulfield. So at least at 5-on-5, he won't always be stuck against a powerful line.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I don't know if it's going to happen, to be honest, because of maybe, again, the fact that we're going to be at the Bell Center maybe as a factor for Caulfield, because we're going to be controlling the matchups. I need to see it, because I don't know what Duchamp is thinking, to be honest. Maybe a Romanov steps in as well. I don't know if anybody has really blatantly played badly enough for him to kind of merit a spot, as much as Caulfield is on the offensive side of things, is an option that obviously makes sense with his pedigree in college. But to be seen. But that pretty much wraps up our review, guys. The series is now tied 1-1. Again, this is going to be interesting. I know a lot of people thought the Leafs would be in 4. We all think that the Habs can pull this off. One last question before we wrap it up. Does your prediction change, Justin?
Nope, not at all. Habs in 6 for me.
Alex?
Same thing here. Habs in 6.
Okay, for myself, Habs in 7. I think this is going to be a close one. Let us know what you guys think about this game. Toronto fans, Montreal fans, let us know what's your strategy going into the game. If not, that's Alex, that's Justin, and myself, Mackie from the No Respect podcast, and we'll see you for the next game. Merci et bonsoir.